Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to download a file, pause the download, and also how to resume the download and export the file to the file gallery, whether that be on Android or on iOS. So I'm going to have this state variable download progress and a setter for the state variable, which is called set download progress. When I call that, it's going to re-render my UI, so it's going to show the different state. I'm going to start that at 0 because when I first load up my app, it's going to be at 0% downloaded, and I'm going to display the progress inside a little text. Saving that, you can see it on screen, but I might only want to show that when I'm actually downloading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another state variable that says that holds my download, and if there is a download there, then it's going to show my progress. So basically, if download evaluates to a truthy value, then it's going to show that text there. I've got a use effect that I'm adding here. This is going to basically set up my download, and then I'll have a few buttons that I can use to start the download, pause the download, resume the download, and export the file once it's downloaded. Use effect is called once in this case because I've got an empty dependency array that you can see as the second parameter to use effect. The first is basically a callback that's going to be called every time that dependency list changes, and because it's empty, it only gets called when the app first opens up. The return from use effect is some cleanup that you can do when the screen's going to go away. I've imported star as file system from expo-file-system, and so now I can go ahead and create a download resumable. There are a few different parameters I need to pass to that. So the first is the URL. I'll leave that blank for now and come back to fill that in. I also need to specify where I'm going to save it. And this isn't somewhere that will be accessible from like files. This is like internal app storage. Then I've got some options that I can choose to set. And finally, I've got my callback here. With this callback, it's going to give me a bit of info about the progress, and so I can update my download progress status so that the percentage updates in app and gives the user an idea of how much the file has downloaded. So like where you might use this is if you say you've got an example is Netflix. When you download a file to watch offline, a video to watch offline, there's a download that shows and it shows you sort of like the percentage download, and so this is where you might use this. So it gives you the progress, and so you can use the total bytes written over the total size to basically get how much of the file has downloaded. And I'm going to go ahead and set that download progress because that's going to trigger the update to our UI. Once I've got my download resumable created, I can set that download. And that's going to mean my progress percentage shows on screen. But I actually think that I probably only want this showing when I'm actually downloading, so I'm going to have this is downloading state variable, and I'm going to have a setter for that called set is downloading, and when I toggle this to true, then I'm going to show the progress. It's going to default as false when I start because I want to have a button that triggers the download. If you wanted to, you could automatically trigger the download programmatically. You don't need to rely on the user pressing a button. It depends on what you want to do inside your app and what logic you want. You might want to trigger a download for them if it's something that makes sense to download. Like, for example, if you had like a database that you wanted to use as a base and download that to their device, then you could trigger that in the background because it's not something that they need to be concerned about. So now we've got this download button, and on press we're going to call download file. I only want this button showing when there's a download and it's not as downloading. So when it's not downloading, I want to show this button to allow the user to start the download. I've got it as async because the file system actions I'll be using are asynchronous functions, which means they can be a little bit long to do. That's because you're downloading a file. You will have all experienced that is not instantaneous. So in order to not block the UI, we await the result here. So I'm going to call download async on this download resumable. It'll give me back like the URI if the download succeeds. Console logging this, you don't actually need to console log it. You can do whatever you want with it. You might even not use it. You might not need to use it. And I'm going to go ahead and add in that URL that I want to use. I'm just using an example URL. And I'll click that download button. I forgot to set is downloading and download file, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. The reason I need to set this is so that it shows the progress on screen and also removes the download button. So now you can see that. You can see it's looking a bit funky. I think that I need to multiply by 100 to get that percentage working correct, but I'll come back to that later. I want to show you the core functionality of downloading and exporting the file, and we can focus on that little detail later. So now I'm going to work on pause download. I want that to show when it is downloading, and I've got a button that has a title pause, and on press we'll call this pause download function. Once again, this function is async, and that's because it's performing an action which might take a little while to finish executing, so we need to wait for that, and we don't want to block the user there. So I'm going to await download.pause async, and that's going to pause that download. And I can console log that the download is paused. You could do something else here if you wanted to log it to like an centralized logging system, so that if in production you're having issues, you can check what's actually going on and get alerting on any failures. But for the purposes of this, this is enough for me. So when I clicked pause, because is downloading false, it's now just showing the download button. I'm going to show you how to add a resume download button, and so for that I'm going to need a state variable called is paused, but I'm going to add this button first. So that's what I'm going to call my state variable. I haven't created it yet. I'm going to only show that download button when it's not paused, because you can see currently it's paused, but it shows download. I don't want to show download. So now I'm going to add that state variable for is paused. It's going to represent whether it's downloading is paused, which will only happen basically once downloading has started. So now when I pause, I'm just going to set as paused, and I'm going to go ahead and add my logic for resume download. This logic's pretty similar to downloading the file, except instead of download async, we'll just call resume async. Once again, this is an asynchronous function. And when I resume download, then pausing is false because we've resumed. And yeah, I need to update set as pause to be true. After the file's finished downloading, I'm also going to want to set is downloading to false. So I'm going to need to do that for both the resume download and also download file. Cool, let's start our download. You can see the progress ticking up, and I can pause it. You can see it's paused at 0.078%. I want to make sure this pause button only shows when it's not paused. So you can now see only the resume button showing. I can resume and it continues downloading from that percentage. And then you can see that it's downloaded to that spot because the URI is console logged. Now theoretically you can do cleanup in this use effect. I didn't have any success with this, but it's potentially because I actually called the wrong thing. I called pause async where I should have been calling pause download. So I called pause async. I think I should have been calling pause download. If anyone feels like playing around with this and seeing if you get this working, feel free to share the code or submit a pull request to my repo. My code will be on GitHub and I'll link it in the description. But yeah, I didn't get that working and didn't notice it till kind of just now. But the function I created for pausing is actually called pause download, so that's likely part of the issue. I need to install the async storage, and that's because I'm going to show you guys how to, when you exit an app, you can keep the current download state, and I want to show you that. And you can do that by using async storage. You can create like a savable that you then save to async storage and then get back out to resume downloading from a particular point. So here in the pause download function, I can go ahead and add the logic for async storage. I'm calling set item. That's going to set the item given a particular key, which I'm going to use download, to a particular value. So I'm going to JSON.stringify because that means that it will be the values that you pass to async storage need to be in string format, and I'm just stringifying this download.savable. Savable. And which basically gets a snapshot of where the download is at that point in time. So now I'm going to go ahead and get that downloadable if it exists, and if it doesn't exist, then I'm going to go ahead and create my own downloadable, and this will mean that if there's a download existing, then I can progress with that, and if not, then I'll progress with a new download. So I'm getting my saved download using this async storage.getItem, and I can pass my key, which is download. That's going to give me some JSON back, which I can pass. And that's going to give me the download object that's saved. And from there, I can create my download resumable and continue my download. So here I'm basically going to check whether it's undefined, what I get returned back from getItem, because if it's not undefined, then I can go ahead and use that JSON, and otherwise I want to just progress with the creating a new download. I need to update this variable to JSON because that's what I have at this point in time. If saved download JSON is actually undefined, then yeah, that's when I create my new one. So I'm just going to copy and paste this existing logic because I'm going to use the same logic if it's undefined. Then I'm going to call that from inside my useEffect callback. Now I'm going to create my download resumable from my saved download. So I'm calling this create download resumable. I'm going to need to pass in the URI and also where it is actually saved in the file system. So the file URI. Any options, which I sent no options initially, so I suspect that's also empty. And then the callback. I can reuse the same callback that I actually used below, so I'm going to extract that outside of the that if statement, so I can reuse them in both places. Cool. Now I'm referencing that callback from inside this download resumable. Finally, I can get that data, the resume data, from that saved download. I don't need to do that when I'm creating a new download because it's got no resume data because it's currently got no downloaded data. Then I can set the download, and that will allow me to choose to continue if I want to. It's getting a bit of an error, so I'm just adding a try and catch here to make sure that any errors get logged to the console. Once again, if you were actually doing this in real life, you would probably make sure that this is going to a centralized logging system that had some sort of alerting and monitoring in place. Then you could keep up to date with any errors happening in your software and proactively resolve them before they impact your users. Let me know if you guys want an example video on something like that. I talk about it a little bit, but I haven't actually shown anything practically around doing that. So I'm moving all of my code inside this try because I was getting an error. And I found out what my error is. It's actually this import star as async storage should be import async storage. So I was having some issues there. You can also see I was getting cannot read property URL of null, and that was causing issues because save download JSON was null. So you saw I updated my if statement to be and save downloaded JSON is not equal to null. So I need to set a few more things. So I need to set is paused because when I have a download resumable that has been saved, it means that I'm actually in a paused state because the file's partially downloaded. And that actually also means I'm in an is downloading state as defined by my other logic. So I can click this resume and it should work. Sometimes when you're having a few issues, it's good to just do a console log to sort of see what's going on. And looking at this, I can see that URL is what I need, not URI, to give the where to download the data from. So now that I've figured that out, I can resume, and you can see that it continues on from where it had started downloading. You could see the progress was showing as 0. If I wanted to fix that, I could have also saved the progress to async storage, but for the purposes of showing you guys how this works, I didn't think it was necessary to add that there. If you want to show like the progress as is, then yeah, you can go ahead and get that from set that against async storage and then get that item back. So I'm now adding in another state variable called isDownloaded, and why this is I want the ability to go ahead and download to export a file when it's downloaded. I'm going to want to remove that download item when it's downloaded, because basically at this point I'm saying it's already downloaded and I want them to start again if they come back. If it's downloaded, then I can go ahead and reset my file. So I'm going to go ahead and add a function here for resetting my download. And this is just going to allow me to re-download if I want to. I don't think there's many cases you'd actually want to do this realistically, but yeah, if you did want to do it, you can. For me, it just makes it easier to test and show you guys different states and different flows, because I can go back to things being at 0%. So when I reset my download, I'm basically creating that new resumable again, and setting that is downloading to false, sorry. I'm going to show this reset button whether it's downloading or downloaded. The only time I don't want to show it basically is when it's not downloading, so initially when I first load the app, because it makes no sense to reset if it's not downloading. You can see it's erroring because callback doesn't exist. If I go up, you can see that I've defined callback inside this use effect. So I'm just going to need to move that out so it's accessible outside of use effect. So I'm just going to define it at the same level as my state variables. That means it'll be accessible inside this reset download function. At this point, I also want to make sure I'm setting is downloading and is downloaded to false. The actual logic you will have will probably be a little bit more dependent on your app itself. I'm also setting every value basically back to its defaults. So yeah, set download progress to 0, is pause false, is downloading false, and is downloaded false. You can see I've reset and it just looks like I haven't done anything with the downloads yet, as if I loaded my app up from fresh. Now if it is downloaded, then I'm going to want to have the opportunity to export the file. So I'm going to have this on-press export download function. This is basically going to get called when this export download button is pressed. And what that's going to do is, for iOS it's going to share it, and for Android it's going to use the file system to request access to a folder and then save to that folder. That's because how Android and iOS save things to files is a bit different. iOS kind of handles it in a more general way where you can share it sort of anywhere, and Android sort of handles it a bit more specifically related to files. I'm going to go ahead and download an additional dependency, which is expo-sharing. That's going to allow me to share it to the iOS app. What I was doing there was just cleaning up the code a little bit. And I'm going to start my app again. Cool, you can see that my app's now connected again. And I'm going to import star as sharing from expo-sharing. That's going to allow me to use the tools to share, the package to share. What I'm going to need to share is actually where the file is saved, and that's in the file-system.document directory plus large MP4. So I'm going to await share async. And to that I can just pass the file that I want to share, and it will open up the prompt in iOS and allow me to share it anywhere where it's valid to share. So the actual options will depend a bit on the file that you're sharing. So it goes ahead and downloads the file. And after it downloads the file, it's going to open up an export file button. And you can see there are a few different options here: save video, save to files, copy, and yeah. I can save it on my iPhone, and then if I navigate to files, I'll be able to see it inside my files. You can see it's there. Now saving on Android is a little bit more complex because it's more explicit, so let's go ahead and add that logic. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and fix this percentage download because we're getting towards the end of the tutorial. So I'm going to times this by 100, and then I'm going to basically say that I want it to 2 decimal places. I can do that using this function toFixed, and then providing the number of decimal places I want, which is 2 in this case. Now I'm going to open up my Android emulator. And I can start adding some logic for Android. One of the first things I'm going to need to do is request permissions. This is going to open up a dialog that will allow me to select which directory I want to save the file in and give me back whether permission was granted for that directory. So I can just say storage access framework, which is specifically for Android, .request directory permission or whatever it is. You can see the code on GitHub, so if you missed that there, you can go ahead and refer to that on GitHub. I know it can be a bit hard to see with part of it off the screen, but it helps people see the code if it's a bit more zoomed in, so apologies if you're finding that a bit challenging. So once I've got my permissions granted, I'm going to want to go ahead and read this file from that file-system.document directory as a string. I'm going to specify a few options. So the main option that I need is that the encoding is base64. And then once I've got that string, I can actually write that string back to the Android directory using storage access framework. So I'm going to create a file async, use it with the permissions directories URI. So whatever directory I've granted permission to, I'll have the directory URI that I can then save the file to, and I specify the file name. I also specify the MIME type, which in this case is application/mp4. Then once that file is created, I can go ahead and write some data to that file. So I'm going to have this function here that's going to go ahead and write data to the file. So it's going to write as string async to the URI, and it's going to pass that base64 data that I've read out earlier. I need to specify that encoding type, which is just going to help make sure that it saves correctly. This catch is going to catch any errors that come up. Like I've said earlier, best to log to a centralized place. For now, I just console log when I'm showing you guys these tutorials for simplicity purposes. Okay, cool. Now we're in Android and we're opening up Expo Go. You can see the download button, so I'm going to click that and it will kick off my download. I've got the pause and reset buttons. They operate the same way as iOS, so I'm not going to show you those. Then I've got my export file button that opens up this file browser, directory browser, which I can choose where I want to save the file and allow the access. That goes ahead and saves it. So if I go to the Android file browser, I'm just going to go to recent files because it's easier to find things that way. And I'm not an Android user typically. You can see my file is there. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial today. If you have, please like and subscribe for more content. All my code will be available on GitHub.